again, we are. Let's assume that it's good. But it's gotta get better. It's supposed to get better.
Mad Men, The Forecast, the 10th episode of the final season. So as AMC likes to put it, only 3 more episodes to go before the series finale. A little confusing? I think so. I keep hearing 3 more, and I'm doing the math in my head trying to add it up to 14, and I'm coming up 1 short. I would very much like it if they would do like a 2-hour series finale. I think we've earned that, but I haven't heard anything about it, so I'm not expecting it. So this week, The Forecast. Now, the title refers to an assignment that Roger has set forth for Dawn. Now, it's a little bit of a conceit because, as Roger put it, he's looking for a 2,500-word manifesto on the future of the company. Now, I mean, they just want something really for the next year, is what he said. And I feel like, shouldn't sales do this? Shouldn't, like, Pete Campbell do it, or the head of accounts? I'm trying to think who is the head of accounts these days. They got rid of Bert Peterson, they got rid of Kenny. Is it Pete? I'm not actually sure. So I think that would be the role that would do this. I don't know why they're having the creative director give a forecast. I mean, if I was Dawn, I would say I'm going to, my forecast for the next year is to pitch the business that sales brings in. I mean, that's his job. Or to actually critique the pitches that his team makes for the clients that sales is bringing in. I've actually been in that situation in my professional life where, not being in sales and they're asking, you to give an accounting of your time. What are you working on? And I would just say, I'm working on the projects that the salespeople sell. The orders that come in, I'm working on those. If you want me to be doing more with my day, tell sales to sell more, give me more responsibilities. I don't know anyone out there who's been in that situation. I'm sure a lot of you have, but it's frustrating when your pipeline is dependent on the work of others. But that might have been even a better title for this one rather than Forecast, the pipeline, because obviously that's a term that I'm sure Roger and Dawn would be familiar with. So it's a little bit of a cheat or a conceit because it really just drives the plot forward and gives Dawn a reason to sort of think about his own future in pretending to work on this assignment from Roger, which it's okay. With the number of episodes we have left, this is what we need to be worrying about, is Dawn and his future. That's what everyone wants to know. Is he the man falling out of the window? I'll get to that in a little bit. So everybody has a plan. And Richard, the potential, love interest for Joan, millionaire, potential scam artist, he's recently divorced and he's looking for a fresh start with no plans. So his plan is no plans. Joan's in LA, and I was very confused at first. Did she quit SCNP? What is she doing? And then we see Lou Avery. So it looks like when Roger let him go, it looks like they sent him to the LA office, which I wasn't even aware was still a thing. I didn't know that they still had that. I wasn't sure. They haven't mentioned it in a while. This the West Coast presence. So what were they doing there? It seems like they were, headhunting employees from other companies to come work for them. But what else do they do? It seems like Lou is spending all his time pitching Scout's Honor to Hanna-Barbera, which was great. He is a guy who really does not care. And I can't blame him for how the company treated him. He never had a contract, Lou. I never really liked Lou, but you can't blame him. I mean, he's playing the hand he was dealt. So, one date, and this guy is already very concerned about does he want Kevin in his life? Is he going to be helping raise this boy? A little presumptuous for one date. Seems like a conversation that would happen down the road. See if there's any chemistry between you and Joan before you start worrying about who's going to raise her son that you just found out about. Obviously, they have some of that instant chemistry, but maybe it wouldn't work out for other reasons. But when she tells him that she does have a 4-year-old at home, he's doing the math in his head and he's realizing that that's going to be, he's no spring chicken, so he's going to be stuck with this kid for the rest of his life, and that's not what he wants. He wants to go to the pyramids, and he wants to travel the world, and he wants to have no plan, no responsibility. And he starts yelling at Joan during one scene. And he's yelling, he said, "This wasn't supposed to be the way it was," and he's very upset. And Joan handles it with kind of class and charisma that she always has, where she holds it together. She's holding back tears, and she kind of softens the situation. And she tells him to have a good night, and she's going to leave. Later on, when he comes back, I guess we're talking about the Joan storyline first. When he comes back later with the flowers and apologizes and says, I could picture myself in your son's life. I think it's something that I want. Again, jumping the gun a little bit, why would you even assume that Joan wants you in her son's life? I just thought it was the way it was written was a little hasty for me. I thought it was just a little strange that this is the conversation they're having on a first date. I mean, the scene where Joan is talking to the babysitter as well, and she says, "You're ruining my life." That was obviously directed at poor Kevin, and she didn't mean it. And when she left, again, her acting in this episode was tremendous. She's sort of, again, holding back the emotions, and she says, "Bye, sweetie," and she pulls it together for the kid. Really, really great acting in that scene. One thing I want to actually mention, and I did a little math here. I Googled it. Why does Joan have this babysitter? Why not hire like a full-time au pair? She is a millionaire now, basically, right? So McCann bought 51% of Sterling Cooper and Partners, which they valued at $65 million. Joan had 5% of a share. She had a 5% share, which is roughly $1.6 million. So why is she paying some babysitter, probably like $1 an hour, to look after Kevin? You should have a full-time employee, I would think, with that kind of money. The website I looked at said that in 2015, money that would be $10 million. So why is she not living in a mansion somewhere with full-time staff? I don't know. I know why she's still working, because she makes it very clear later that she's got the job that she loves. She's good at her job, and she loves where she's at. She's one of the few characters who's actually found real fulfillment. And she's doing it for her son, but in some ways, of course, she feels that Kevin's holding her back from some of the things she wants to do, but he's not really. He's what is important to her. So just hire an au pair, Joan. That's what I say. I like at the beginning of the scene when she's at the Beverly Wilshire, which it's true that Warren Beatty was living there in the early 70s, so that was a nice note when the Sterling Cooper and Partners West Coast receptionist asks if Joan had seen Warren Beatty. That was a nice nod to the times, a historically accurate comment. She's ordering room service, and she orders skim milk and grapefruit and coffee, and then she sort of figures, why the hell not? She orders French toast as well. Treat yourself, girl. That's what I say. I actually wrote down girl with 4 U's on my notes here. So I did not understand her mission to L.A. at all. I thought they had fired Lou, but I guess not. They just transferred him out there to get him out of Dawn's way. And I don't understand really what she was doing there. If anyone can explain it to me, please leave a comment. So, it really brings us to the meat of the episode, and which is Dawn's apartment hunting. Well, he hasn't begun apartment hunting yet, but Dawn is really thinking about sort of what his next move is. Obviously, that's the central conceit of the episode is his own forecast, and he has his apartment up for sale, and his realtor wakes him up. And at first, you think, is this another one of his girls? But she's blonde, so we know it can't be. He only goes for brunettes. And she's saying, you have to get out. Someone's coming to look at the apartment. He doesn't even have time to shower. He's got to get out of there. And she's upset that he didn't have the carpets cleaned, but he did. But they can't get that damn red wine stain out of the carpet. We know red wine stains can be a real itch to clean up. So he should have just replaced the carpet, but he didn't. And it lends narrative sort of credence to what Dawn's going through, that his past is haunting him. And he does need a fresh start. He should rip up the carpet and start again. But he's telling the agent to look at it like a blank canvas. Don't stage the apartment. Don't worry about the missing furniture. Use it to tell a story, because the potential buyer's imagination is more powerful than anything he can construct. This is what he spent his lifetime doing, is using people's imagination and using people's wishes to get them to act. So now he has to sell his own apartment. And she's just telling him that the place reeks of desperation. So, excuse me, it reeks of failure, which is something that I really don't think she should be saying to her client, especially selling what I assume is a, you know, several $1 million apartment. I'm not sure. I forget what the asking price ended up being, but Mr. Get Ready to Take a Giant Leap Forward says he has a good feeling about things. And in the end, he's right. It does go for asking price, but that was again in service of the plot, because if it didn't sell, he'd be stuck sitting in his past, but now he's forced to face an uncertain future, as what happens at the end, which I want to close with, so I'm going to save that observation for last. He reminds the agent that a lot of wonderful things happen there too. Zooby Zooby Zoo, for one. And, you know, the first song we heard this season was Is That All There Is? And it really makes me think of what Don's going through. I mean, he has his job back, his career is clicking again, he's not doing carousel pitches anymore, but he's critiquing other people's work, he's more of a mentor now. He's slowly sort of being, I feel like over time, if they went another 10 years and he was still there, he'd be in sort of a Bert Cooper role. Just the sage advisor, not really contributing much, just the name on the door, which I don't think Don would be fulfilled by that, because now he's asking, what's the next step? You know, is this all there is? Even if, you know, Megan cashes that check for $1 million, Don had to say 15% or so of the merged SC&P, so he's got to be looking at about $5-6 million he got from that deal. So even after all his expenses and his divorce and the lawyers, he's got to have a couple million left in the bank. So he's not worried about money. He's not worried about his career. So now he's looking for the top of that Maslow pyramid, that self-actualization. You know, who am I? He has all his needs met. Everything he's ever wanted has been achieved. He's achieved the goals that he thought he set out for himself, to get his job back and to make all that money. And he's still very unfulfilled. He doesn't have his soulmate, and he's not feeling, you know, self-actualized. He's not feeling like he has a good grasp on what he needs to feel fulfilled and on what his future is. What do the next 10 years hold for Don Draper, which is, of course, the point of this second half of this season, but also more importantly, that's the point of this episode specifically. So she keeps saying, the agent says, you know, now we need to find a place for you. And in Severance, we see him looking at his furnished apartment. He turns the light on, and it's empty. And he feels that way. He feels empty. At the end of New Business, he walks in, and now it's really been cleared out. So it drives the point home further. And now in this episode, he's actually locked out, and he's told to leave. They're signing the papers, and his apartment's gone. He has 30 days to vacate. He's standing in the hall. So each week, it pushes him a little bit further away. Next week, is he going to be standing out on the street corner? Is he going to have to leave New York? He needs to figure out what the next move is for him, which is why he's taking on Roger's task, and he's so desperate to ask Ted, to ask Peggy, what do they see for the future. He's trying to find some truth in their experiences, but what they're looking for, it seems so small to him. Ted wants a pharmaceutical, and Don's saying, that's your goal, to close New Business? Well, that's great. And Peggy's goal is to become creative director. Her goal is to make a catchphrase. Don's already done all this. You know, he sort of laughs at this. He says, I don't need to hear this. What's next? What do you want after that? But she doesn't know, because she's still working on those initial goals, which is very true to her character. I think Peggy has obviously really come into her own. She's looking to be Don's replacement one day, like if Don takes on that mantle of like the Bert Cooper, which Roger's doing now, but you know, how much longer does Roger have? That senior partner sort of sidelined personality, while Peggy drives the creative. I think Don needs to be thinking about his own career, his own mortality, because his replacement is staring him in the face. I really enjoyed the Peter Pan pitch for the Tinkerbell cookies. I've been, dying for real New Business for another pitch, and I enjoyed that. We have a peanut butter cookie problem, people. It was good to see Don at work again doing what he does best. And I know he said he's not doing any more work. He's just going to be reviewing the work of his staff. And he's, that is what he's doing. He's not going on the pitches. He's not going to any meetings at this time. He's just working with the staff and making sure that they're on track and they're on message for what the clients want, which is a good role for him. I've been in that position before, professionally as well, where you're in more of a mentor role and you're reviewing other people's work, but you're not really doing anything yourself. And that's management in a nutshell sometimes. But you really do miss doing the work. You want to just step in and say, let me do that for you, because sometimes you miss doing the tasks that you're teaching. So I can definitely relate to that and maybe get a little extra glimpse into how Don's feeling about his new mentor role. When Don suggests to Mathis that he use one of his old tricks, and it's only going to work if you're Don Draper. And Mathis goes into the meeting. Apparently he dropped an F-bomb in the previous pitch. He got very flustered, and now he's wondering how he can make amends. And Don says, make a joke, you're going to wash your mouth out with soap, or tell him, you got a lot of nerve coming back here after how you acted. So Mathis can't pull that off. He's not Don Draper. So when it goes really badly, and he says to the two Peter Pan executives, you guys have got a lot of balls coming back here, showing your face again after what you pulled, and they just kind of go from, and it cuts from them to him and his partner to them, and then it cuts a little wider, and then you see Pete, and Pete is just. That was the funniest moment of the episode for me, was the reaction shot on Pete. It was right up there with Roger last week when the Calvé women are slamming doors on every side of him. He just doesn't know what to do. Pete's expression, that was the high point of the episode for me. I rewound it 3 or 4 times. I couldn't stop laughing. I do enjoy Pete. So you don't have any character, you're just handsome. Now, that's not fair to Don. Don is handsome, but he is also tremendously talented. So he's not getting his due there. That's not really fair. His character is another matter altogether. And as we later learn, Lee Gardner Jr. may very well have had the hots for Don. But in this circumstance, it wasn't the right advice to give him to go and to try to use one of his old lines, because they couldn't pull it off the way he could. So it's interesting that Don and Betty would both have awkwardly inappropriate, near sexual encounters, or sexualized encounters, I should say, with Sally's friends in one episode. Of course, big scene tonight we haven't touched on yet is the return of Glenn, who, just like Megan's family, did we really need to see Glenn? And it recently was brought to my attention that is actually Matthew Weiner's son, which I didn't know. I never realized that. So I suppose I can understand why he'd want to bring his son back into the show in the final seasons. And it did serve 2 purposes narratively. One, it gave us a great reason to have more great acting by Sally. A couple of good Sally scenes. And it also gave us a face to put on the Vietnam situation. And that was a major thing happening then, was kids being shipped over to Vietnam. And I can't think of another age-appropriate male character that the show could send over there. So Glenn was an obvious choice to bring back, and it gave us a chance to revisit that awkward chemistry between him and Betty, or complete lack of chemistry. I'm sorry, Matt Weiner, but Glenn's acting is not good. It's very stiff and very, very awkward. I know that's part of what he's going for. That's Glenn's personality. He's a very awkward young man, and he never grew out of it, apparently, but there's just no chemistry between them. Betty revels in the attention, but she revels in any attention. If you remember back in the first season, there was a great episode where Roger kind of makes a pass at her, and then there's a number of scenes where Betty's being hit on by different people, and she enjoys the attention, but she doesn't give into it generally. It's disgusting though how she gets kind of a cheap thrill out of Glenn chasing her, and she kind of is giving Sally the eye, kind of to go get the purse and get the money yourself. I want to talk to Glenn. A little strange, but in the same episode later, before she goes on her 12-state journey of America, Dawn takes Sally and all her female friends out to, I think it was Chinese food. And Don's making kind of dumb dad jokes, and all the girls love him and think he's so funny and charming, but Sally's just rolling her eyes at her embarrassing dad. And the one friend sitting to Don's left is definitely all over him. and making eyes at him. And Don's eating up the attention. Of course, as low as Don can get, he would never, I would hope, do anything with one of Sally's underage friends. He wouldn't. He has a line. It's not his type anyway. So Don is kind of flirting back with her a little bit, but not too much. I didn't think it was that inappropriate. He was just kind of playing along, but Sally was disgusted, and she's basically saying, I hope I don't turn out like you and Mom. And Don actually steps in, and he's apparent for a moment, and touching on what he reminded her back in Waterloo is, you're too young to be this cynical. You're going to find out that you are like your mother and me, but it's what you do with it, the choices you make, that's going to define who you are. And she can be more than just a pretty face if she chooses to be. That's all Betty's kind of ever relied on. And back to Betty as well, I'd like to think that she had some character growth. She wants to be a psychiatrist now because people love talking to her, but she takes Bobby's machine gun toy away and just throws it out. She hasn't changed at all. That's just rude. And you'd think that with Sally sort of moving out, moving on, she would embrace the role of mother and really give what she has left to Bobby and Jean. But she's just as cold as she was before, throwing out the toy like that. I noticed that little touch, and it really spoke back to sort of the early seasons when it was more about Betty in the home and her relationship with the kids and Bobby. I remember the scene where Bobby was playing with the robot and spilled the milk, and Betty's like, do something, and Don throws the robot against the wall, and he's like, is that what you wanted? Just let the kid be. Let him play with his toy. Let him spill his milk. Let him be a kid, Betty. Just relax. You live in this multi-million-dollar house. Henry loves you. You have 3 healthy kids. Calm down. That's my message to Betty. Oh, Betty. That's what my grandmother would always say. She'd call me and say, oh, Betty. So I was screaming at the TV when they got very close, when Glenn came back to see Betty. I was just saying, no, Betty, don't do it. I could just see Betty in a moment of weakness or in a moment of ego or in a moment of desperation. I don't even know what it would take. But them falling down on the kitchen table together and the camera panning up to a window, I didn't want to see that. The world didn't need that. And thank you, Matt Weiner and co-writer, I don't remember your name, for not giving us that scene, because we did not need it. The scene with Sally and her mother at the kitchen table was very well written. I enjoyed that. Sally's line, her mother's warning her about boys, and Sally said, this conversation is a little late, and so am I. And the look that Betty gives her was great. That was a great scene. It was very well written. I also wonder about, the actor playing Glenn, and is this part emotionally damaging him at all? Because he was very young, asking for Betty's hair, and he was very young, sort of pining after her and being really creepy. I wonder how much of it he understood at the time, and now that he's 18, or however old he actually is, in universe he's 18, but I wonder how much he understands now and looking back if it's affected him at all. I mean, I certainly hope not, but I did think of that, because he's grown up more or less playing that part of Glenn. I don't know what else he's done. For Sally, I remember at the end of Waterloo, she was basically becoming Betty Jr., the way she was smoking her cigarette, the way she was acting, and just being very cynical and very jaded. So her fears of becoming just like her mother are definitely founded, but I think she has enough self-awareness to avoid that. The way she looks kind of down and says, I just want to eat dinner. And she's just so exasperated with the world. She's so ahead of her time and so smart that I really think she can do more than her parents did and really avoid making the same mistakes that they did. At least I would hope that for her. Spin-off with Sally going to college in the late 70s? I don't know. Might be good. It's too bad she's so angry at her father. I really enjoyed the scenes where they're looking up at the whorehouse and says, this is where I grew up, and she's starting to understand him more. And the scene where, she's getting out of the car and she goes, I love you. And Don's just like, taken aback. He's finally getting this affection from his daughter. I hope we're not backpedaling on that, because I appreciated them coming to terms with each other, especially her coming to terms with who her father is and accepting him for who he is. So, Dawn and Peggy have great chemistry now, and when Dawn had to mediate between Pete and Peggy in the hallway, and Pete's trying to fire her staff or fire her, I enjoyed that a lot as well. Dawn sort of playing referee between the two of them and just putting them back on track, almost like they were his 2 kids at work. Everybody wants to dissect the opening, the falling man and the walls falling away and what it represents, but if you're looking at it that way, I just want to suggest that perhaps that's not the right way to look at it. It's metaphorical, and I don't think it should be taken too literally. I've talked to people about it, and they say, oh, who's going to jump? Who's falling? I don't necessarily think that in the finale anyone's jumping or falling out a window. I think it's just purely metaphorical. And all the speculation on, oh, this is Dawn, he's going to jump off the balcony. Is it possible? Yes, I really don't think so, and I don't hope so. I think it would be a little bit lazy. And I think it's a stronger symbol just as metaphor, just as that, as a symbol, rather than as an actual foreshadowing of an actual event. All of this makes me think of a pivotal scene. Season 1, Episode 9, I think it was. It's called Shoot, and it's the episode that ends with Betty on the front lawn shooting the rifle, and she's in her nightgown, and she's got the cigarette hanging out of her mouth, and she's taking shots at, I think, the pigeons. Really evocative image. And basically, McCann was trying to poach Dawn away from Sterling Cooper, and he didn't go. And Roger says, I don't know what it was. Was it money, or I don't know. And they're talking about his salary, and Dawn was saying, I don't want a contract. And Roger says, basically, what do I get in return? And Dawn says, if I leave this place, one day, it will not be for more advertising. And Roger asks, what else is there? And Dawn says, I don't know, life being lived? And Roger says, if you had to choose a place to die, I'll bet it would be in the middle of a pitch. And Dawn says, I've done that. I want to do something else. So rewatching that episode in the context of this second half of Season 7 really takes on all new meaning. That was Matt Weiner in 2007 really broadcasting the end of the show. Is this all there is? And if it is, what's next? So I look forward to seeing you next week as we see Time and Life. And after that, there'll be only 2 more episodes left until the series finale. See you next week.